Okay, this is a 2000 Celica GTS 2ZZ motor, and I'm going to do a cold startup. At cold startup, the engine looks like it's a bit stumbly, and I believe that there is a vacuum leak somewhere, which is what I'm trying to diagnose. At cold startup, it hesitates and sometimes stalls on cold acceleration. When it's warm at operating temperature, the RPMs are too high. They're like 1800 RPM or something. So I'm trying to diagnose the problem. You can see about a minute after startup, the engine temperature is still cold. The idle is kind of hunting. Okay, let's see what the scan tool data is doing. Okay, coolant temperature is 28. Engine speed is, I'm going to say 1200 RPM. And throttle position is at 12%. This is the throttle. I disconnected the cable, as you can see. And I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little set screw in there. Right there. A little set screw, which I screwed in. So the throttle position is at 11, 12 or whatever. No throttle cable. You can see the RPM seem to have increased to 1400 RPM. I don't know why. It seems to be getting extra air from somewhere. Let's see if we can add the idle air control mode. Again, this is the X-Tool D8. We'll display all. Let's see if we can find idle air control. Intake air control vacuum switching valve. See what that is. Idle signal. That may be important. Idle air control IAC duty ratio. Do that. Okay. So engine speed is 1400. This is interesting. Idle air control duty cycle is at 60%. But I think the revs are too high. Now we're at 1500. Holy smokes. I'm going to pause this for a minute, let this engine warm up. Well, so this is a 2ZZ engine in a 2000 Celica GTS. It has a throttle cable and not a throttle motor. It does not have the air injection system, but it has this goofy looking cruise control module that you can see controls the cables. Going to here, look how complicated that is. Okay, let's pause this for a minute and let this thing heat up. It is currently at 54 degrees Celsius coolant temperature. Okay, we're now up to operating temperature, and you can see the engine is revving pretty high with no throttle. The throttle cable is disconnected. We're now at coolant temperature at 90 degrees Celsius. Engine speed at, holy smokes, 1800 RPM. And throttle position still at 12%. And I cannot close the throttle any more than that. Okay, throttle position 11%, 12%. So something is not right here. It's getting extra air somewhere. I think idle air control is at 38.7 degrees duty cycle, or 38.7% duty cycle. Let's have a look inside the car. And that is the problem. At operating temperature at idle, this thing's revving pretty high, 1800 RPM, too much. So that's a problem I'm trying to figure out. Okay, this is a 2000 Toyota Corolla with a 1ZZ engine. It's my daily driver. I just started it cold, as you can see. I just started it cold. Engine temperature at 62, RPM at 1150, 1150 RPM. I find this really interesting. The throttle position is at 9%. Interesting. So let's go for a drive, heat this thing up, and see what happens. Okay, so this is the 1ZZ engine in a 2000 Corolla. You can see that it actually has a throttle cable. You can see that the coolant temperature is now at I don't know if you can see that. The coolant temperature is at 82. The engine RPM is at 730, 750 RPM. The throttle position, interesting, stuck at 9%. Okay, so the throttle is always open a little bit to let some air through. Okay. Idle air control ratio, duty cycle ratio, 42%. Okay. There you go. And I can see the IAC stuff right in here. That is the idle air control valve. Okay. So engine temperature 83 degrees Celsius. Engine RPM at operating temperature 750 RPM. Throttle position at 9%. Okay, this is a 2004 Celica GTS with a 2ZZ engine, and this is cold startup idle RPM. Okay, so you can see here the engine temp is cold. You see here the RPM. And you can see the engine RPM is a little under 2,000 RPM. All right. After driving this around and getting up to operating temperature, you see there, don't worry about the check engine light. I'm not. It's the air injection system, and I'm not concerned about that at all. The idle RPM looks to be below 1,000 RPM at operating temperature. And this is my son's Celica GTS. An incredibly fun car to drive. Very cool. This is what it looks like. Okay, you can see here that some data. In case you're wondering, this is the X-Tool D8 scan tool. Anyways, engine speed you can see is a respectable 750 RPM. And throttle position at 14%. Really interesting. Throttle positions at 14%. You look at all the other throttle things here. Accelerator pedal position. Accelerator position number 2. Throttle position number 2. Throttle idle position. Throttle motor. All of these things from number 4 to number 8, and there's more, are not available on my older 2000 Celica GTS. Okay, this engine is quite a lot different. This is a 2ZZ motor, but you can see here that we have an air injection valve, an air injection pump. This is also related to air injection. This is an emissions equipment that comes on sometimes at startup to pump more air to the exhaust, I think, to help the catalytic converter burn off the excess fuel. And you can see here, the biggest change I can see is that there's no throttle cable. There's a motor here. And a whole bunch of wiring with sensors that controls the motor. So the gas pedal goes to the ECU as an input. The computer, the ECU, decides how much to open the throttle. So there's no direct connection between the gas pedal and the throttle. There's a motor, okay? And that's why we have all these extra sensors there, all these extra stuff there. Normally on a 2000 Celica GTS, there's a thing here that basically controls the cruise control. So there's a thing here, motor, that connects with a cable to the throttle that controls the cruise control, and there's a second cable that connects to here from the throttle pedal to control the throttle as well. With an electronic throttle valve, you don't need a cruise control module anymore, because the computer can just open and close the throttle to control the speed, kind of as his wishes. So anyways, I am diagnosing an idle problem with a 2000 Celica GTS. So with a coolant temperature of 95 Celsius, this is idling at about 750 RPM. Throttle position at 14%.